has reserves, etc. Because basically, when you release these animals from the Head Start program, bear in mind that they have been away from the wild since they were babies, and the diet that we feed here, they're certainly not going to find in Hellshire Hills. No, there's no pawpaw, there's no melon, there's no caldo out there. So they basically have to go through a period where they have to depend on their reserves, their fat reserves, and their body condition before they can actually make the transition from their captive diet back to the wild diet. So we basically look at how fit the animal is. We look at, there are things that you may not see externally in terms of body condition that you may say, okay, it looks fine, it looks nice and healthy, but there may be other indicators. For example, they may have a low protein level in the blood, and so there may be other cause for concern. So a combination of those determines whether or not the animal is deemed fit for release. What we've tried to do basically is to do so before the nesting season, which is usually in May, because we figure the adult animals don't need the stress of having an influx of these new animals and competition, etc. So animals will give them time to adjust before that period. And I think, maybe I'll double check, but usually around that time, in terms of, you know, rainfall levels, etc., it may be an easier time for them to find food and blossoming flowers, etc.
But taking them back to Hellshire has not been without its problems.
Habitat for the Jamaican iguana is very important because, as you can imagine, with any species, if they don't have the desired or pristine habitat that they require, then you're going to have reduction in species. Now, the Hellshire Hills is coming under a lot of threat for habitat destruction through predominantly the use for charcoal. They are cutting large-scale logging for charcoal burning. Minor ones are other forest users that will harvest trees, probably other shrubs, for medicinal purposes or for carving. But charcoal burning is the one that is destroying or reducing on a faster scale the potential habitat, the wider habitat for the iguana. Currently, they are in a central point where we have now recognized that charcoal burning is penetrating to that location. So it is now very urgent for us to keep that under control. And we are working together, NEPA, along with UDC and Forestry Department. We patrol the area very frequently. We have field officers who are in the field, and they will stay in the field during two main periods, nesting and hatching period, where they secure the eggs and young ones when they hatch out away from predators, and they're also monitoring for intrusion by humans.
There was once a plan to actually move the iguanas who are making a home in the Hellshire Hills over to the Goat Islands. But now, with a proposed transshipment port development, those plans appear to have been all but scrapped. We asked those in the know, though, if the port development will hurt the Hellshire Hills Iguana project. They wouldn't be drawn on the matter.
The Hope Zoo is not, on any zoo or any enclosed environment, is not the solution to wildlife situation for being endangered, or even for those that we may consider a nuisance. So habitat maintenance and living in harmony with nature. Harmony is the key thing. As Jamaicans, we ought to embrace our natural history. We ought to embrace habitat restoration. We ought to embrace nature on a whole, because we are part of nature, and that doesn't give us the God-given right to manipulate nature the way we want to have it done.
In the meantime, the work continues to save the iguana. If it works, Jamaica would have done what rarely ever happens. We would have been able to save and make a species, once thought extinct, self-sustainable.
What we have to do is find a way to coexist and harmonize with nature. I'll give you a simple one. You'll probably take a look later on. The American crocodile is one that Jamaicans fear. No need to fear. They play their role in nature in Jamaica. They are a top predator, and they are basically the cleaners of the waterways, so to speak, because they not only, predominantly their food is fish, basically. But with the Jamaican iguanas, how many of us would have ever seen one in the wild? I mean, I've been out and I've only seen just a few. It's there because they're solitary. So having them here at the Hope Zoo is just for us, for educational purposes. And the Head Start program is here for ensuring that our future generation, the younger ones, will be able to see what our past has been like. So we have to preserve the past now for the future.
Now, after the break, we'll find out what we can do to prevent the alien invasion. So thanks for staying with us on Live at 7 as we conclude our special report on the aliens among us. We find out what role, if any, we can play to protect our shores from these invaders that threaten the livelihood and habitat of all Jamaicans.
It bears repeating. Jamaica isn't new to alien invasive species. In fact, by virtue of us being an island, we're literally sitting ducks for alien inhabitants. They come in via ships, planes, etc. Many are actually deliberately brought in, as we've seen with the red claw crayfish and even the mongoose, with no ill intent. But their long-term effects are usually anything but positive.
It is really a cross-cutting issue that affects every single sector of our living, be it agriculture, be it tourism, be it health. It affects everything across the board.
Back in the Black River, for example, those who know the area best are very worried.
Well, the main thing is this, that there are quite a number of invasive species in the Black River wetland here now. Of course, the crocodile is definitely not one of them. That is an indigenous animal and of great importance to us here, especially since the crocodile has been the catalyst for the development of the tourism industry here on the south coast. But if we protect the wetland here, and if we see to it that these invasive species are curtailed or not allowed to get into our environment, we'll be a lot better off for it.
And it's because of the impact of alien invasive species on the area that Mr. Swaby has allowed NEPA to mount an exhibition at his famous Black River attraction, free of cost and open to the public.
That many of the persons in this area are not aware of the value of the wetland. And I think that a little bit more has to be done to educate the people in the area about protecting this wetland. I'll give you an example. This is a Ramsar site, and this is also the largest remaining wetland here in Jamaica. Yet, about 50% of it has already been drained, spoiled, and that is the northern section above the Holland Bamboo area, the upper morass. In the 70s, it was hoped that there was going to be a big rice growing project up there, and a lot of that area was drained, and then it was abandoned. There's very little rice being grown up in that area now, and the people are not aware of how much damage has been done to the wetland, and this in actual fact has been causing flooding in some areas and the destruction of some of our very important trees, the freshwater swamp forest and so on.
For National IAS Coordinator Nelsa English Johnson, education plays a major part in combating AIS in the island.
We sought through this social marketing campaign to change the behavior of the residents within the Black River Lower Morass. Of course, it's a very vast area, so we could not target all the communities, but we worked in particular with 6 communities. The Black River, what the SDC would call Black River proper, Crawford, Slipe, Middle Quarters, Parity and Pondside were the 6 communities that we decided that we're going to work with.
And the Jamaican experiences have inspired the rest of the region, which is also battling various invasive species.
This particular project is a Caribbean-wide project. The reason being, the invasive alien species is a Caribbean-wide issue. We're so small as a group of islands, and we're so relatively close to each other that in order for us to be successful in any attempt to try to manage invasive alien species, it has to be a collaborative approach throughout the entire region. And so for this particular project, there are 5 countries that were part of that project. You have the Bahamas, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago and St. Lucia. So all 5 countries worked together collaboratively to develop different aspects of the project. In terms of public education, we again as a country I would say we led from the front in terms of the intensity of our campaigns, the variety. We weren't afraid to take risks. Like, we took on the social marketing training. All 5 countries received the training, but Jamaica was the only country to actually go back home and implement a project.
Along with education, though, guidelines governing the pet trade are of mammoth importance. You see, most of the invasive species that have come into the island got here via the pet and ornamental plant trade.
The pet trade is actually one of the major pathways through which invasive alien species enter into the country. And we have several examples. The lionfish started in the aquarium trade. It was brought in because, you know, persons thought it was so beautiful and they wanted it for their aquarium. And then when they got it, they realized, oh, I am not prepared to deal with this fish. And so, you know, persons get pets, you start to develop emotions towards it, you love it, you don't really want to destroy it, and so they say, okay, let me be kind and release you back into the wild. A lot of these pets are not from our side of the world, and so in releasing them, some of them might not survive, but for those that do, they normally develop special tolerances for conditions that, you know, our native plants and animals would not be able to survive under those conditions. And so, as I mentioned, the lionfish is something that came in through the pet trade. The sucker-mouth catfish that is now proliferating in the Black River Lower Morass, that's something that came in through the pet trade. Even cats and dogs, when they are mistreated, when they're not properly fed and cared for, they return to their feral instincts, they return to their wild instincts, and then they start to predate on other things, such as the Jamaican iguana within the Hellshire Hills.
So, Jamaica has developed the Pet Trade Pathways Toolkit.
Things like developing posters that reminds current and potential pet owners, look, owning a pet is an awesome responsibility. Ensure that you do adequate research before you acquire a pet. Make sure you know how long it's going to live. Make sure you know how much it's going to cost to take care of it, and ensure that you are ready to take on the full responsibility of taking care of those pets, because when they're not when they haven't done the proper research prior to acquiring the pet, then what happens is, once they get tired of it, or once they can't be bothered, or once financially they cannot afford it, those pets are going to get released into the wild, and then they endanger our biodiversity, they endanger human health, because some feral dogs we would have heard about, you know, them living in buildings and attacking people and such. So they have far-reaching effects, and so that's why the Pet Trade Pathway Toolkit was designed to help us to decide how we go about handling the pet trade. And there are things like voluntary codes of conduct, so pet trade owners and operators will, you know, sign to a voluntary code that say that I will only import legitimate pets. I will not import pets that can be proven to be invasive. So these are some of the things, and for pet owners as well to sign to say, I am acquiring this pet and I am committed to taking care of the pet for its full lifetime.
But if you thought the story with invasives ended with the red claw crayfish, lionfish, and the paperbark tree, even the mongoose, you would be wrong. Over in the mountains of Portland, farmers are dealing with another invasive that's a growing problem.
The white-tailed reindeer was brought into Jamaica as a pet. They were kept in an outdoor housing during one of our many hurricanes. The housing was destroyed, and these white-tailed deers have since gotten out into our environment. We have gotten anecdotal information that they proliferate quite a bit. They are a huge burden to the farmers within the Blue and the Jonkra Mountains, because they eat pretty much anything that is plant-based, even crops such as melons and other things. We have gotten anecdotal information that they are eating the farmers basically out of a living, and so we have recognized it, and it is something that our National Invasive Alien Species Working Group is actually looking at addressing, whether it's going to be through a public education campaign or some kind of removal campaign. But it is something that is on the radar of the Invasive Alien Species Working Group, and going forward they will be trying to seek funding to help address that problem.
Pretty soon Jamaica may have to start an Eat It to Beat It program to tackle the cute but voracious eater, who, like every invasive before it, has no known predator in the environment.
Well, that is an option. That's another eat it to beat it option. Yes.
But while Eat It to Beat It programs and education are all well and good, laws and guidelines will also have to be enacted to prevent invasives from entering the country.
A national invasive alien species strategy and action plan was developed under the project for Jamaica. It's a 6-year plan to 2020 that will guide the country to continue on and to build on the efforts that have been put in by the project. So that component will be spearheaded by the Ecosystems Management Branch within NEPA, as well as the National Invasive Alien Species Working Group, which is a multi-sector stakeholder group consisting of universities such as the UWI. It consists of other government entities, it consists of NGOs and other committed stakeholders, and they will lead the charge in implementing that 6-year strategy to take Jamaica even farther forward in the fight against invasive alien species.
And finally, here's this word from the experts. Although these things are pretty, just leave them where they are.
If you go from one area to another, I know things are beautiful, they're pretty, persons will want to move, you know, flowers, oh what a beautiful plant, and you take it and you carry it home. But you could be carrying home an invasive. You could be introducing a problematic plant into another area. And a lot of us, as especially ladies, when we find a plant that's nice and we plant it in our garden and it starts to get out of control and we want to get rid of it, what we tend to do is dig it out and throw it across the road or throw it over into another bushy area. But this plant is not dead, it's still alive, and so it continues to grow and the problem proliferates. So we encourage persons, don't move living things from one place to another. Not just plants, we're talking about animals as well. So lizards, anything else that you see that's nice and you might want to have it as a pet, we encourage persons to take a picture. A picture will last forever.
All right, that's it. Thanks for watching us. Do join us again next week. We'll have a whole new raft of programs for you on Live at 7. If you missed out on some of the programs this week, then why not tune in to Live at 7 Rewind, which comes your way Sunday morning at 10. I want to thank you for watching us, and I want to thank our hard-working production team. I'm Simon Croskill. Bye for now.